This is Mac OS Ken.
Heavy weather rolls through for Apple, the one place in the world where iPhone prices went down, and a range of reactions to Apple's Glowtime announcements. It is Wednesday, the 11th of September, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSCan. Remember the ominous clouds for Apple about which we spoke earlier this week? Some of it has hit, and some of it was heavy. This week was expected to see the announcement of a new foldable phone from Huawei. It was also supposed to see the last court in the European Union decide the fate of about $14 billion in Apple's money. Both things have happened. We will start with the do-re-mi. The Financial Times says the European Court of Justice has sided with the European Commission. According to the report, the court has determined that Ireland provided unlawful aid to Apple through a tax deal between the two. This was an argument made back in 2016, though nullified by an EC court in 2020. However, says the piece, the European Court of Justice on Tuesday affirmed the Commission's original finding that Apple's tax structure in Ireland, which excluded the profits generated from the intellectual property licenses held by its international and European arms, amounted to state aid. As a result, the piece says Ireland has been told to collect 13 billion euros from money placed in an escrow account for the past 6 years. As for this week's other cloud, Huawei may be able to brag about its trifold phone, but it will cost a pretty penny for people to try it out. Engadget says the Mate XT, which the company claims is the first triple-fold phone to hit the market, will debut in China and start at 19,999 yuan, approximately $2,800 US. That's enough to buy an 11-inch iPad Pro, M3 MacBook Air, and an iPhone 16 and still have cash to spare, according to the report. That price may sound ludicrous, mostly because it is. And yet, Engadget says the Mate XT has already caught the imagination of Chinese consumers. By early Tuesday, according to the report, Huawei had received 3.7 million pre-orders. A lot was made after Apple's media event about the fact that prices for iPhone 16 did not change, but a piece from TechCrunch says they did in one place. For the US, China, Japan, the UK, France, Germany, and India, only one saw the sticker price change at all. That was India, which saw prices drop 11% for the iPhone 16 Pro versus the iPhone 15 Pro. This year's Pro Max also saw a decline, dropping 9% versus last year's model. And there is a perfectly good reason for that. Actually, there are two. Apple would like more buyers in India, and lowering the price on the Pro phones could help. The reason I was originally thinking, though, they cost less for Apple to sell there. The report points out the price reduction follows India's recent decision to lower import duties on electronics and Apple's expanding local manufacturing operations in the country. In July, Apple had already decreased prices for its Pro iPhone 15 models in India by 3 to 4%. Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives has said for the last several weeks at least, in preparation for an iPhone supercycle, Apple has increased orders for the iPhone 16 line from 80 million to 84 million initially to somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 million units. Now TF International analyst Ming-Chi Kuo seems to indicate something of a disappointment for the iPhone 16 line, since Apple is only ordering 88 million to 89 million units. It really doesn't sound that bad, nor that far off from the people who keep screaming supercycle. And yet a post by the TF International analyst on Medium has the analyst calling for a disappointing fourth quarter for the line. He is predicting a 5% to 7% year-on-year decline compared to the fourth quarter of 2023's iPhone 15 series. For this quarter, they're expected to grow 10% versus last year's iPhone 15, though that is mostly due to production problems with tetraprism camera components for last year's Pro phones. You know, unless he's wrong. The analyst wraps his post saying, the pre-order for the iPhone 16 series could influence production plans for the second half of the fourth quarter of this year and the first half of 2025, making the pre-order result the next point to watch closely. But why wait, huh? Not a lot in the way of reaction from financial analysts that I've spotted since Apple's Glowtime event. Apple 3.0's usual roundup was unusually short, while an article from Investopedia had a couple of firms weighing in. The only analyst who seems to have adjusted anything was, wanna guess, you never will, okay, I'll tell you, it was Wedbush analyst Daniel Ives. Honestly, it feels like most of this may have been written before the event even happened. Today, he wrote on Monday, Apple launched iPhone 16, which we believe will be the most successful iPhone unit launch in its history, as Apple Intelligence will be the launching pad for the consumer AI revolution globally. While noting the staggered rollout of Apple Intelligence, Mr. Ives says the new era of personalization and how consumers interact with their iPhones has now begun, and we believe this will cause a renaissance of iPhone growth, high single-digit growth upside for Apple over the next 12 to 18 months, and drive shares higher with a $4 trillion market cap in 2025. Mr. Ives has an outperform rating on Apple shares. He used Monday's note to raise his price target on the shares from $285 to a street high $300. B of A analyst Wamsi Mohan lauded the enhanced functionality of the hardware showcased that included a new app for divers in the old Apple Watch Ultra 2, sleep apnea detection for Apple Watch Series 9 and later, over-the-counter hearing aid functionality for the old AirPods Pro 2, and the coming of Apple Intelligence. All of that could serve to provide broader appeal to expand the reach of its products, according to Mr. Mohan, all without raising the prices. He's got a buy rating on Apple shares and a respectable, though odd-sounding price target of $256. Evercore analyst Amit Daryanani, we continue to think Apple's AI strategy is prudent and revolves around private, on-device functionality that underlies most of the features on the phone rather than looking for one killer, headline-grabbing application. The features will be rolled out in a staggered fashion, with some coming next month, more in December, and the final features coming next year. This could elongate a replacement cycle, but still provide a steady upside bias to iPhone growth. He's got an outperform rating on Apple shares. Evercore's price target on the shares is $250. Less turned on by the slow roll for Apple Intelligence are analysts at JP Morgan. Investopedia has the firm indicating that the lack of a specific timeline for the rollout of many AI features leaves some uncertainty around Apple's AI plans. That could delay hardware sales in the firm's estimation. Jefferies, on the other hand, seems to be thinking along the same line as Evercore's Daryanani. According to the report, analysts for that firm said the vague timeline for AI feature releases could turn the coming upgrade cycle into a multi-year cycle that includes releases of the iPhone 17 and beyond once more useful features are broadly available, rather than massive upgrades to the iPhone 16. And finally, playing the parts of both happy and sad was Piper Sandler analyst Matt Farrell. On the positive side, he wrote in his note, "Camera control is an exciting consumer innovation." The stable pricing is a positive in the uncertain consumer backdrop, and the health-focused features are impressive. Negatives, noted in his note, the staggered Apple Intelligence rollout could dampen broader excitement, and the Apple Intelligence use cases likely still require user education. Additionally, he thinks supercycle excitement is already built into Apple's current stock price. Piper Sandler has a neutral rating on Apple shares and a price target of $225. You know, those fancy pants New York people can keep their reactions. I got Glowtime feedback from macOS Ken listeners, one of whom is fancy pants and does live in New York, but still. Matthew wrote in to say he was kind of bored by the new iPhones. He had planned to upgrade this year, but now he's thinking he might hold off. He did find the Apple Watch Series 10 upgrade compelling until he remembered/realized no blood oxygen detection. I get there is a patent dispute, he says, but at this point it's an argument not to upgrade if you have an older gen with that feature still enabled. As for my fancy pants New York friend, Rick reached out saying, a bit meh in relation to the phones. The gorgeous watches and sleep apnea detection was awesome. The killer item, which I don't think people grok yet, is that Apple is about to do to the hearing aid industry what they did to the music industry, the GPS industry, the cell phone industry, the untapped market for affordable, effective, and cool hearing aids. That market is huge. Thanks to both Matthew and Rick for writing in. Everybody else, I would love to read or hear your thoughts. You can write them my way, info@macosken.com. A voicemail would also be neat. You can leave one of those at 716-780-4080. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macosken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. That email I gave out a moment ago, info@macosken.com, or that phone number, 716-780-4080. Those are great ways to get in touch. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.